Week 3 recap. I finally won a fantasy game, so I'm a little bit in a good mood. So let's talk first about the questions that came in. No punishment for last place in my league. I really like the way my league formats it, in that the winner of the consolation bracket gets a choice of their draft pick the next year. Keeps everyone engaged. Last place punishments are pretty funny, but our league didn't really get into the idea of something more negative happening to them past just losing their entry fee money. So we kept it there. I will say this year, the person who was able to choose their draft pick chose the 5th overall pick, which I think was a mistake. Usually you'll see the number 1 pick. I think number 1 was the move. McCaffrey, of course, got hurt, but you can never go by injuries in the end. I think McCaffrey was the prize, and still this year he could be the league winner just because he's so valuable. So I really like that prize for the folks who didn't make the playoffs. Worst trade I've seen, there's so many. In my league last week, there was a straight up, last year I really fleeced a couple guys, to be completely honest. But I won't go into that. Let's go this year. There was straight up, a guy traded for, he traded Cortland Sutton, whatever, and DK Metcalf, just straight up for Kareem Hunt. So I know Kareem Hunt went off, but Kareem Hunt's value isn't close to DK Metcalf, so I think that was a really bad trade. So that's the worst trade recent memory that I've seen. But that said, that guy is right now celebrating that he got a win because of Kareem Hunt, so we'll see what happens there. Trade I regret doing, I guess I traded. I never regret a trade because in the moment it really does make sense, and the only trades I've really lost are because of injuries. Or recently that I can remember. So the one that was worse was 2 years ago. I won 2 of the last 3 years. The year I didn't win, which I think was 2 years ago, was a year I traded for Mahomes and Kerryon Johnson for like Aaron Rodgers and really no one. And Kerryon at the time, it's hard to remember, 2 or 3 years ago, was supposed to be incredible. But I also got Mahomes, who was supposed to be incredible. And the first half of both games, both guys got injured. Mahomes for like 3 weeks, whatever his kneecap was, or it was supposed to be 3 weeks. Kerryon basically lost his career because of that. And I lost because of all of that. So that's the trade I regret doing, even though at the time, it really seemed like I ripped the guy off. Okay, let's talk about your games here. My reputation is saved as Professor S barely edges out Team the Prophet. Absolutely gigantic for what I've committed to and what I've said is going to happen. And this all happened with McCaffrey's injury. Professor S taking a massive downgrade with the McCaffrey injury. We'll see what happens later in the season. I still would say if this guy could put together some wins, this is absolutely a top contender because that running back group of McCaffrey, Gibson is just too pretty. And Julio looks like despite the weirdness last game, I don't know what's happening, but with A.J. Brown really taking a backseat, Julio's ceiling is higher than we thought it was to pair with D-Hop. So there's a lot to be excited about this team when McCaffrey's healthy. When McCaffrey's injured, this becomes a bottom half team. So I think it's just all comes to what happens with McCaffrey. If you're Professor S, you got to scratch your head and say, how are you going to fill that gap? I don't think you had Hubbard. I don't see Hubbard. I don't know if you've gotten him since. But if not, you're going to start having to look towards guys like Melvin or Javonte. I don't know who you're going to go with. Or maybe Trey Sermon. Fortunately for you, what we liked about your team is you do have depth. So we'll see where you go there. But if you're Professor S, you're at least happy that even though you lose your main guy, you win a must-win game against what is one of the weaker teams in the league, being the Prophet. Team the Prophet. What can we say about you? So you had to play Pollard, who's a backup running back. That's never ideal. But you get Odell back, and his usage, 9 targets this early on, and a carry, so 10 potential chances, is a huge bright spot. I'm really high on Odell. I think Odell, rest of season, could finish top 15 wide receiver. I think his ceiling could even be top 10 receiver. We'll wait and see on that. But when you add him, your team gets a lot better, despite A.J. Brown continuing to disappoint. A guy I was really low on this season, so at least I'm getting some of these takes right. Actually, I think I'm getting most takes. Just we'll get to Professor S really hurt my pride. But yes, Saquon also coming back, massive plus for you. As I mentioned, he was my first round draft pick. I think the hope was that week 3 is when his season started. That's what I said when I drafted him. That's what I've been saying since. And this is what we saw. We got 20 plus points from him. So your team takes a big step forward if you're Team the Prophet. Do I still have concerns about Team the Prophet? Yeah, for sure. Especially since you're now 0-3. But there's some bright spots. I gave you a C in their draft grade before the season. I'd still probably say your team's now to a C+, maybe B-, but 0-3 start. I would be very surprised if you have enough manpower to make it to the playoffs. I also will say I did not look to see if any trades have happened in this league. I always forget that this league's pretty, and there was a trade, and we will talk about it. I love it. This is going to be a live reaction to the trades. So, before we go on to the second matchup, Pain Train and Son of Chaos, straight up Higbee for Logan Thomas. That's very interesting that you rarely see a 1-for-1 same position trade. Logan Thomas, a guy that I think has a higher floor. Tyler Higbee, a guy who has a higher ceiling. We saw in this past game, I believe Higbee had a big game. So who would I rather have? Definitely Higbee, because that passing offense is much better. But I don't think anyone got necessarily robbed here. I think if I were to guess, Logan Thomas would outscore Higbee on half the weeks, but overall points, Higbee will have more points. So we'll see who outscores the other. This is one of those trades that really is just two guys disagreeing about value, because there's no argument. It's like, oh, I need someone like this. Oh, I needed someone like this. It's really just who's going to do better. So we'll be able to see pretty clearly from there. Wow, this is a bad trade. Wow, this is a bad trade. Wow, this is a bad trade. Someone gave up Kareem Hunt and Mark Andrews for Tony Pollard. That is just insanely bad trade. Wow. Kareem Hunt much more valuable than Tony Pollard, not even close. Mark Andrews, a very valuable tight end, as it will show throughout the season. I mean, yes, we've been shitting on him just because he's been in the conversations with guys like TJ Hawkinson, who he's not the value of. But my goodness, wow. That one I can't understand. Caesar, next time we email, I would love any insight into why this trade was made. That is bad. Team the Prophet. Oh, Team the Prophet's the one who made the bad trade too. Wow. That's why he had to start Pollard, because he had Kareem Hunt. He had to start Pollard and said that is bad. Man, my dad watched my recap for my own league last week and said I was being too mean, so I want to take my foot off the pedal, but that is a bad trade. I must be reading something wrong, and if not, then youch. Wow, okay, anyway, next matchup. Team Glory Hole, absolute heartbreaker over Pain Train to go to 3-0. Wow. I mean, this is the closest game I think I've ever seen in this league. But fortunately for my pride, Glory Hole being my finals prediction, gets another win to go to 3-0. Glory Hole just continues to get top performances out of his top guys. Justin Jefferson, a guy I traded for before this week, really looking like he's going to bring back the value that you expected. He's had a kind of slow start, but man, he's going to be fantastic this year. And so is Aaron Jones. Nick Chubb's the only guy, guys, you scratch your head. 22 carries, he only got you 84 yards. No other points, no passing game usage, and no touchdowns. But Chubb really did get the most points in this backfield. I'm not concerned about him. Who I am a little concerned about, and I'm also not concerned about DJ Moore, whose value I think is even higher with McCaffrey injured. And I think we saw that with his 12 targets. Scary Terry, man. I still think he's a startable guy for sure, but man, that offense is really concerning. I think you're going to see this to continue to happen. He'll have his weeks, but I think he's really going to finish in that top 15 to 20 wide receiver range when you expect him to get you top 10 numbers. He's not going to get you that. I think he's going to get you closer to 20 than 10, and that is absolutely disappointing. TJ Hawkinson's rough week with only 2 targets, I'm also not concerned about. So if you are Glory Hole, I think it's continuing to be excited about it, especially now that you add Kareem Hunt. My goodness, this is getting insane. You get to bench Miles Sanders, who would start for any other team in this league, and you have Mark Andrews also. I mean, there's so much trade potential with this team. You have to mismanage it to not get a high playoff seeding and probably win it all this year. I would think there's going to be some more trades for Glory Hole, because he could get some absolute studs with packages like a Mark Andrews and Miles Sanders. Guys on his bench he could get RB1s for. So curious to see where he goes from there. On the other side, Pain Train, with the first loss of the season to go to 2-1. I mean, Pain Train was a team that I was a little bit mixed on coming into this season. I still am a bit mixed on him. Fortunately for him, Jalen Hurts continues to get him fantasy points despite not being the best actual NFL quarterback, so that's good news for you. And I really like your running back group, as we mentioned. Amari Cooper, the guy I actually like the most on this team, giving you some issues here. I wouldn't expect that to continue. And so for all those reasons, I'm higher on this team than I was coming into the year. Not by too much. I still think it doesn't have the firepower to compete against Glory Hole throughout the season. But as you saw, this was a close game. This game could have went either way. And Pain Train could have easily been 3-0. We're looking at a probable playoff fringe team here, especially as you have guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire on the bench. But yes, I mean, when we're talking about star power, I think that wide receiver group is just going to lose most weeks to guys like Glory Hole. I mean, Godwin, Amari, and Sutton, solid, but not enough. And then Hollywood Brown dropping 3 touchdowns, just so frustrating. Pain Train summary, I'm higher on him, but I don't think it's going to have enough firepower. The absolute blowout. Team Livin' La Vida Loca just absolutely demolished Yoda. Absolutely demolishing Sons of Chaos. Sons of Chaos just didn't come to play. 100 points. I talk about Sons of Chaos dependency on Tampa Bay, and for him this week, he can point to a productive week from Brady, but as I mentioned, I do not like the other options. I just think there's going to be too many down weeks, and that's basically what you saw here. Gronk did get banged up, and he is having a good season, but 9.5 giving you a bad game. And then Fournette, starting at running back, I mean, he's one of the worst starting running backs in fantasy that in this 10-team league that I'm seeing. You don't want to have to lean on him. He gets you 6.4 points, and that was without Ronald Jones being used. So that I can't justify starting Fournette over James Robinson. I wish you gave me a call before this week. I would have told you, no way, Jose, but you went with it. After all, though, you can't really kick yourself because nothing would have made a difference. You could have started all your best guys, and it wouldn't have made a difference. There's definitely reasons to be concerned about guys like Robert Woods and Devontae Smith. I think Robert Woods will see more value throughout the season. Devontae Smith, I think, is going to have too many up and downs. He just plays like a rookie. He's talented, but when you watch him, there's balls that he should position himself better for. There's balls he should be catching. He's not. But for now, he's only getting you 6 targets in a game. They were behind most of the game. That's really disappointing. Only 28 yards returning. So, yeah, I mean, if you're Sons of Chaos, this is your first loss of the season. You can't be too down on yourself. But, again, a team this dependent on Tampa Bay, when there's so many options on Tampa Bay, I just don't see winning at all. Livin' La Vida Yoda, another team I was mixed on coming into the season, but I love that running back group. Kamara and Najee Harris. Najee Harris just absolutely easily the highest usage out of any running back in the NFL. You have to be super happy about that start. And then Adam Thielen continuing to give you value along with Brandon Cooks, 2 real value guys. That's exciting. But yes, when I look at Thielen, Cooks, and Claypool, all guys who are giving you value, all guys who you have to be like, wow, I'm really good for starting them. You're right, but I think that's one of the weaker wide receiver groups in the league. Again, I mean, there's just so much star power on other teams in a 10-team league. I don't think that's going to be enough for you. But for now, these guys are performing, so it is what it is. And Kittle at tight end, Swift in the flex, man. This is a good team. This is definitely a good team, Team Livin' La Vida Yoda. I'm surprised I only gave you a B- coming into the season. I think the issue I had was with depth, and especially at wide receiver. If this wide receiver could give you at least 80% of the value that they're getting up to this point, then you might be a genius. You might have gotten value at the wide receiver position, and you might be a title contender. Because that running back group is as good as anyone else's, and there really is no holes outside of what I think to be wide receiver. Very, very exciting times if you're Team Livin' La Vida Yoda. I will repeat, I really do not like the guys on your bench. I think it's the worst bench in the league. So we'll see how you do throughout the buys. But man, I mean, if you make the playoffs, and you get production out of wide receivers, this is a team that can win it all. Very, very exciting times, again, in Livin' La Vida Yoda land. Team the Chairman, another pretty seamless victory over Team Crucifier. Crucifier getting their first loss, a team that I like a good amount. But man, they're because of Cooper Kupp, DK Metcalf finally giving you value, great. I think I said what's holding this team back is Dallas Goedert in the tight end position. I'm going to continue that. I really do not like that tight end start. I think it's one of the weaker tight end starts in the league. But when you're looking at your team, no holes. I still feel no holes. The upside might be a little bit limited. I'm surprised that you're still holding on to both Stafford and Rodgers. I would think there's trade value for at least one of them out there. And decent depth for this team. If you're a Crucifier, you're, again, looking like a playoff team. I'm not concerned. 151 is a pretty solid total. Team the Chairman, though, just getting 200 points and looking fantastic. A lot of that coming to Josh Allen. Fantastic value at quarterback. You got to just keep rolling him out, and that's great. Kenyon Drake, not a great start. I mean, it was pretty clear coming into the game that Peyton Barber was going to be heavily used. I don't fully understand the Kenyon Drake start. I guess your hand was kind of forced because Darrell Henderson was injured and Myles Gaskin really not being productive. That is really bad news for you that Myles Gaskin isn't bringing production, because now that RB2 slot is a bit of a concern. Mike Evans trying to prove me wrong and say that Tampa Bay guys have value. Again, my take is that it's going to be a lot of ups and a lot of downs. So there's concern about him, but you do get Mike Williams to get you so many points. If Mike Williams can be that wide receiver too, any issue I had with your wide receiver group is fixed. You get to plug Darrell Henderson back in. That's fixed. Then your holes are all fixed. And at 1 and 2, you're looking like you could be a contender as well. So an uptick in value for Team the Chairman right now. I'm definitely looking at them in a brighter light than I used to, especially with Zeke's performance. A lot of guys just really coming through for you. I still view Crucifier as a slightly better team than Team the Chairman, but hey, doesn't seem like it right now. But much needed win for Team the Chairman. Very exciting. Final matchup is between TBD and Team El Captain. Team El Captain going to 0-3. Very disappointing start for Team El Captain. Coming to this season, I was actually I was mixed, but a little bit high on El Captain. But Mike Davis just continuing to disappoint. Jonathan Taylor continuing to be what I have always taken to be the potential bust of the first round. And that makes your running back group very vulnerable. And a team that doesn't have so much depth, if I had to re-rank right now, I hate to say it, and it's not because you're 0-3, but I hate to say it, but this would be one of the teams lower on the list. At least you have Devontae giving you a ton of value, but man, I mean, there's not much to be excited about. A lot of the guys who are boomer bust, I think what I mentioned with this team is it was kind of a boomer bust team with guys like Kyle Pitts, Mike Davis, who we haven't seen, Jonathan Taylor. There's a lot of like low floor guys, and compared to where they were drafted. Jonathan Taylor because of utilization compared to most first rounders. Kyle Pitts because he's a rookie. So I think unfortunately you're seeing the floor, and Mike Davis because it's a new situation on an offense we didn't really know what they'd look like. For all that being said, the guys who were boomer bust, I think all have been bust up to this point. So unless there's a turnaround in those guys' seasons or you do some miraculous work, this is a team that's going to be probably outside looking in when it comes playoff time. But we will see. I guess it's TBD. And talking about TBD, let's talk about Team TBD. Getting a very slight win, but being able to tell a full different story about their season. Now going to 2-1. If there was a 2-point difference in this game, we're talking about both these teams being 1-2. But the narrative changes. A lot of that does come to Eckler. Eckler is just continuing to give you value. One of the most reliable guys in fantasy right now. I will say, absolute red alert. Absolute red alert. Damian Harris getting outsnapped, I believe, or outtouched by Brendan Bolden. James White getting injured and Damian Harris being very unproductive in the passing game. I think it's time to bench Damian Harris. I don't know how you could continue to start him. Only 3.1 this week. No reason to expect more. That's very alarming. Then Allen Robinson, 2 catches, 27 yards. Man, Justin Fields looks awful. Unless you hear that another quarterback's in, I think that's a guy you probably have to bench too. I don't know when I look at your bench if there's guys though that could play instead of him. I mean, we got Emmanuel Sanders. I'm not excited about it. Robbie Anderson, only 2 targets, 1 catch. Josh Jacobs, the only guy who went healthy you could plug back in, but you're losing Madison because of Dalvin Cook being back healthy. So you still got to start guys like Sterling Shepard. I mean, it's not that much to be excited about if you're TBD. 2-1, yes, you're a playoff contender for sure. But is this a title contender like the earlier teams we were talking about? I don't see it as of right now. We'll wait and see. But that's how I feel as at this point. So let's mark down some predictions that I have coming into the rest of the season. I'm going to say, as of right now, if there was a re-rank, Glory Hole is my favorite team in the league. Glory Hole looking absolutely incredible. So I would stick with that. Dunchain, I really know I'm so tempted to Dunchain Team the Prophet. But again, I was talking last week about how there's some guys who could come through, and those guys did come through. Odell and Saquon were the guys I was looking at, and both guys showed about as good value as they can. I would bet so much money Team the Prophet doesn't win the finals, but I don't want to Dunchain a team that could still make the playoffs, and there's enough value here with Mahomes paired up with those guys that I don't want to Dunchain him, but I'm going to Dunchain him anyway because that trade for Tony Pollard. That's my most dramatic Dunchain I could do. So I am officially Dunchaining Team the Prophet. It's what everyone's been waiting for. It's what I feel at heart. I want to reiterate, a Dunchain means that they have 0% chance to win it all. Can moves be made to make the playoffs to absolutely squeeze in? Sure. But is Team the Prophet ever going to win it no matter what they do, no matter what their players do? The answer is no. And if I'm wrong, I will write a poem, a 20-line poem about Team the Prophet, complimenting him or her in any way, their character, their team, and then also including how little I know about fantasy football. So Team the Prophet is officially Dunchained. I'm writing that in my notes. Coming into this, I said I wouldn't, but it was too tempting. So that's the week 3 recap. Hope to see you guys soon. And by that, I mean, I guess make another video of you guys soon because I don't know what any of you look like or your personalities in any way. I know nothing about your lives. It's actually kind of interesting. So with that being said, signing off. I'll talk